Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and I didn't exactly get my normal countdown. So anyway, but I'm here, and it's the beginning of the show, and it is the 13th of March, 11 days until Donald has to put up his $450 million, which we know he doesn't have, but maybe Vladimir Putin will give it to him if Donald is very, very good, if he's really behaving well on the way to the 24th. It's possible that Vladimir will front that money for him as well. So we're going to hope that Donald gets what he needs on that one. And certainly we're going to hope that Vladimir Putin is not feeling too negative about Donald, because right now he's threatening to nuke the United States again. This was just last night. He said he's going to do it. He's got 14 different sites in the U.S., and of course, one of them is right here where we are in Missouri. Obviously not right here, but it doesn't really matter when you've got a 50 megaton hydrogen bomb. If you drop it in Missouri, I guarantee you St. Louis will get its share of the wealth. So that's the story there. And we hope that Vladimir and Donald work out all their problems so that it's not necessary for Vladimir to nuke us. And by the way, I do think it's interesting that here we are in 2024. We're 62 years past the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in that crisis, everybody was absolutely insane with fear. People really didn't know what to do, where to go, how to think, nothing. People were looking for bomb shelters somewhere. Of course, they had a little video that they used to show the kids at school that was called Duck and Cover, which, sometimes people say things about our government, and I always defend the government. I mean, I love the government, but I have to tell you, the people who came up with the idea of duck and cover, those weren't the smart ones. Those guys talked about, first off, getting under your desk and putting your head down. Well, that wasn't going to work, not with a nuclear bomb. And then, of course, there was the additional idea that maybe you could go out in the hallway and put your head down by your locker. Not too good an idea there either. And then finally, they came up with this one. If you're outside and you can't get to any of those great places, well, all you have to do is go find a piece of newspaper and put that over your head. Well, somehow, I don't think in today's world, a 50 megaton hydrogen bomb would have any problem getting through that newspaper. So I think that what you better do is hope that Donald doesn't irritate Vladimir to the point of Putin losing his mind and starting to nuke everything in sight. But I think he won't. And the funny part about it is, in America today, no one cares. No one's worried. No one's frightened. No one's thinking about it. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting contrast. Over 60 years, it doesn't mean anything to us. So, with that in mind, our president, Joe Biden, is going to send $300 million worth of ammunition to Ukraine, because I know Joe doesn't think that Vladimir is going to light the earth on fire. And I think that's a wise view on his part, because Vladimir's not going to do it. I have a lot of people who say, well, what if he wants to really go with us? What if he decides we're all going? Well, don't count on that either, because I suspect that there's some people who work beside Vladimir who will give in to all of his crazy demands except for one, that we all commit suicide. I suspect they have families and they probably want to live another day. And so I believe they will not be lighting the world on fire. It's interesting. Like I say, 62 years later, we've figured it out. No one is going to blow up anybody with these 50 megaton bombs. Now, it's easy to say that because we know that if that happens, well, we won't be broadcasting, nor will anybody else. And so you won't have a chance to say, Kaysen, I told you you're wrong. No. Either I'm right or you'll never have a chance to say anything anyway. So end of story on that one. TikTok. Wow. My kids at school are really bent out of shape over TikTok. Of course, we know that the House of Representatives passed the ban by a lot, a big number, and sent it over to the United States Senate, where we're not quite sure how it looks, although in general, there's an antagonism towards TikTok for two reasons, really. One of them is this Chinese story, and I don't know, maybe you're different than I am, but I just don't have anything going on my phone that the Chinese can find out about that will create a problem for the United States or for me. I mean, what are they going to find out? There's just nothing there. So, they might find out what I bought at Amazon today. I bought a book for a student. They might find out that my daughter bought a doll for her little girl. Yeah, all that's possible. But other than that, I just don't know what the worry is. So I think we can all calm down about TikTok, although I know we won't. And there are a lot of people who are worried. But I'll tell you the one person who isn't worried, although he was for 5 years, but he's no longer worried. And I'm glad he's not, because he's got a lot of worries going anyway. And he doesn't need this one on top of it all. And that's, of course, Donald. Donald was against TikTok. In fact, he was doing a lot of things to try to shut it down while he was, I hesitate to say, but he was president. Anyway, he was trying to shut down TikTok, which didn't happen. And now here we are, and everybody else wants to shut it down. But Donald has something that everybody else doesn't have. And that's a donor who wants to give a lot of money to his campaign, but wants TikTok to remain intact. So as a result, since, Donald is a transactional kind of guy, he is now for TikTok. Civil liberties, we want them. Freedom of speech, definitely. We have to make all of these opportunities available for all of our great creative people and all of our kids who want to dance and sing, all of that. We have to protect it because Donald has a donor. We want to make sure he gets all his money because, those lawyers aren't cheap. And they already know that routine. They know the man doesn't pay. So now he better do everything properly. It's all got to be straight because those lawyers, if they get the slightest hint that they're not getting paid, they know what's coming. So they're watching very closely. So here we are. TikTok, according to Donald, has to stay. I think it's interesting, though, that the legislators who have normally jumped to the tune that Donald has played, these people have decided on TikTok they're not going for it. And I guess part of that is because, and maybe a large part, everybody's worried about their kids. And again, I talked to my students today. I mean, these are teenagers right in the heart of all of this. And they don't believe that there is the slightest risk. Well, doesn't mean that's true just because they believe it, but they think it's safe. They think all the bullying would go on without TikTok. So they don't think anything could be protected from that standpoint. And just in terms of mental health, they feel like, you know, we may or may not be mentally healthy, but TikTok's not the problem. I'll tell you, though, what I worry about, although I can promise you there's nothing we can do about it. Forget all the mental health issues. Forget the Chinese getting our information, because, again, my students aren't worried about what China's going to find out about what they're doing. But there is a problem here. The problem is, you know, TikTok, yes, it's creative and kids can dance, but they get their news through TikTok. That's what they get. And I asked, who gets their news through TikTok? Every student raised their hand. Now, if you're wondering what kind of news they're getting, the next thing I checked, it was how many students think that there's an Illuminati? Well, again, everybody raised their hand. So, unfortunately, that's what they're getting through TikTok. Crazy talk. That's what they're getting. Craziness. And they believe in TikTok. They believe in TikTok news. In fact, they pulled up TikTok news right there in front of me, and they showed me that TikTok was reporting the vote in the House of Representatives. And so they used that to explain that this thing was on the level, that they tell the story and that the kids can get this information without those dumb old newspapers. In fact, we had an interesting discussion about the newspapers, and it was sort of like this. I suggested to them that maybe this, in their view, was sort of like in 1900. If you saw somebody that got a car, you know, one of these brand new automobiles from Ford, Henry Ford's got a car for you. So, okay, but somebody else is going to be coming down the street and saying, wait a minute. Do I need that sputtering, crazy machine when I got this fabulously exotic horse that I'm riding, and I can just stay with the horse? He's a friend. I can feed him. I mean, this is a good thing. Why would I want to mess with those cars? And that's exactly what the kids think. They said to me, Kaysen, you are perfect on this. That's exactly what it's like. Instead of riding the horses, we want our brand new shiny cars. And that's TikTok to them. The newspapers are those old horses that need to go to the glue factory. And that's what we ended up with in class today, that they want their TikTok. They just love it. Now, they don't love it as much as they love this Friday when they all get to go to the big basketball tournament, because Cardinal Ritter always finds its way into these tournaments. And so they're definitely in the basketball tournament on Friday. And so the kids are definitely excited about that. But they're also worked up about their TikTok. They want that TikTok. And at the moment, I sort of think that's what's going to happen. And then I have to say this, and you know, there's a lot of concern about social media, kids even killing themselves, certainly becoming extremely depressed and so forth. But, you know, I think that parents can handle this problem. I really do. I think that social media should not be shut down, not be shut down for kids, not be strictly limited for kids. I mean, I think that the kids are smart enough and grown up enough to navigate all these platforms if their parents take the time to talk to them about things, to get involved in what's happening in their lives. I don't think that the kids are a lost cause by any stretch. You know, every generation looks at the kids and says, well, we used to be terrific. Look at these kids. They're horrible. No, I don't think that's the situation at all. I think the kids are great, and I think they can handle TikTok. I think they can handle Facebook. And I think they need to learn how to handle all of these things because this is the world that they're going to live in. They need to have autonomy, and they need to have the opportunity to think for themselves and to come up with their own conclusions about what's going on with some guidance from a parent, not demanding compliance, but a parent that wants to go through some of the ideas of what's going on in the world and maybe help their kids to think about the way that they want to engage with the rest of the planet. I think it can be done, and I think that kids could rise to the occasion and do terrific. But you just have to give them some respect and some trust. It makes all the difference in the world. Kids respond to that very, very well. Kids hate demands, which I don't think we like it either. And that might be one of the ways that we could even understand what's going on. If we don't want somebody demanding it of us, maybe we shouldn't demand it of the kids. Maybe the kids can be trusted. I think they can. So when it comes to TikTok, frankly, I'm for it. I think we should keep it. I think that we can trust kids to live within the constitutional liberties that are available for everybody. I don't think we have to shut everything down. I don't think we have to tell Facebook which algorithms to use, because I think if Facebook uses algorithms that are aimed at being harmful to the kids, I think that ultimately the kids will react against it. I understand people don't want to give that kind of respect to young people, but I think we can. And I'll tell you that Joe Biden signing this anti-TikTok bill might not be the smartest thing for him either. And I'm talking about in terms of votes. Now, in the case of Donald Trump, he's willing to take money for his position. Well, that's understandable because that's the kind of guy he is. In the case of Joe Biden, I think his heart's in the right place. He is trying to get some votes, probably from some parents who would like to see some of these social media platforms calm down. I know there's a lot of fear, but, you know, if you're going to be a leader, I think you could be a leader with some courage. And I think that you just have to tell people, look, trust your kids, talk to them, guide them. Don't just let everything run wild, but at the same time, don't try to demand compliance, because the kids are going to find a way to get to, whether it's TikTok or something else. It's going to end up out here, and the kids are going to find a way, and they're not going to like you for trying to shut them down and for not trusting them when it comes to making decisions. And I'll give you an example, and this is a really good one from my perspective. Kids are generally open to all kinds of new ideas. They're not wedded to the 1950s or to white supremacy or any of these horrible things that our country has been stuck with for so long. And I've always said to all the people on the right that think they're going to force their children to be right-wing weirdos, I think they're kidding themselves. The kids are always looking for freedom, and I mean real freedom, not the pretend stuff. Not you say freedom, but you really mean freedom to do what I tell you to do. No, they want freedom. They want to be able to figure things out for themselves. They want to do things for themselves, and they want to be able to get it right or make a mistake and then figure out a way to come out of it. So I think that if you allow the kids the freedom to think, which, frankly, if you send them off to college, they're going to think on their own. And they're going to meet a few people with some different ideas than their right-wing parents. And ultimately, a lot of those kids are going to come out of college far different than Donald Trump or any right-wing dictator that Trump can bring from Hungary to come over and tell everybody that you just have to do what I say or you're in trouble. No, we're not going for that. The kids aren't going for that. And, you could already see, and this, I'm going to tell you, out in Wentzville and out in St. Charles with this business of trying to shut down Black history. The kids don't go for this. This is crazy adults. This is crazy adults who are looking back to George Wallace and all those other things in the past and thinking, well, we can get it back. We can go back there. We can shut down all these cases that were wrong. Brown versus Board of Education, desegregation. Oh, get out of here. No. We can get it back. We can go back to the old ways. But not with these kids. They're not going to do it. They're not going to even think about it. They're going to shut it down. They're going to walk out of their classrooms as they have in some of these other schools that we've seen where the parents are trying to impose crazy rules and regulations. Shut down Black studies. No, the kids don't go for that. Those are crazy adults who are thinking about Bull Connor and fire hoses and all those kind of things. They're not going to get it back. They can wish for it. They can think about it. It's not coming back. You can't make your kids be crazed right-wing fanatics. It won't happen. You definitely can't make them like Donald, because in order to do that, I mean, you'd have to be so abusive like that father of his. Fred was not exactly the nicest man, and he sort of taught Donald some ways which, at 77, soon to be 78, this man is losing his mind. And actually, if you listen to some of the tapes that they're putting together, if you think that Joe Biden is stumbling around a bit and maybe slurring some words, trust me, listen to these tapes. Donald doesn't even know where he is sometimes. I mean, literally, he doesn't know. He doesn't know the city he's in. He doesn't know a lot. He thinks he's running against Barack Obama. Listen to it. He says it over and over, what he's going to do to Barack Obama. I mean, the man's got a problem. But that's not the worst of it. As I've said now for 2 days, the worst of it, of course, is Adolf Hitler. I should have started off with that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, either way, at the beginning, the middle, or the end, I don't know how anybody in American politics can survive running through it with Adolf Hitler at their side. I mean, it's just not something that runs very well in America. It's just not a popular idea in the United States. Oh, yeah, let's have a Hitler party. No, I don't think so. But apparently Donald reads this at night before he goes to sleep, and I guess he dreams about it, And that dream has sort of snuck its way into the reality that he lives in. And, you know, people are telling, you know, John Kelly is telling. The wife told, but everybody figured, well, yeah, that's just some disgruntled wife. But John Kelly, nah, I think that one is going to stick. And I think you're going to hear a lot about Adolf Hitler in this coming election with the advertisements that are going to be run by the president. I mean, I don't think he's going to hesitate. And I wouldn't if I were in his position, because let's face it, Hitler is not positive. It's not a winner in 2024. I mean, a lot of the things that Donald is doing are not a winner in 2024, but absolutely Hitler will not be a winner for Donald Trump in this election. Okay. A little bit of time here to sell a few things, and then we'll get back to some really unbelievable developments here, and maybe some that aren't that unbelievable either, or even that scary to some people. But I'll just that's the teaser. We'll get to it in a minute. But let me tell you first about what you can eat when you get off the air here. When I'm off the air, and you're thinking about, you're hungry, which you could take care of right now. You could take your phone with you and listen to me. But the truth is, Wendy's is just waiting for you at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road. And it is great eating at Wendy's. Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, patty melts, pizza, onion rings, baby back ribs. It's all good at Wendy's. And friendly environment, because you walk in there. Let's say you have no friends. No friends. You're a right-wing nut and you have no friends left. Go in and say hi to Ben. He loves everybody. And I promise he'll love you. And don't forget, they're also fabulous with the smoked meats. That's big at Wendy's. I mean, listen, everything there is outstanding. So I recommend that you get yourself to Wendy's and enjoy at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road. And that's in Chesterfield Valley. You'll love Wendy's, all the great food and the smoked meats. I love beef. I love meat. Protein. It's good for you. You need protein. So anyway, that's Wendy's. Now, you can go to 4506 Hampton if you would like fabulous jewelry. And I can tell you right now, Al creates really great pieces that sell for reasonable prices. But I'm telling you this, the creativity is phenomenal. And Al is out there, again, like all of these places that have the owners on site. These are great businesses. They last a long time because people enjoy going somewhere where the owner is there. No, it's really big. It's a big plus for any small business, for that owner to be there. Al is there at Jewels on Hampton. He'll buy your coins. He'll buy your jewelry. He'll sell you great new pieces that he creates. They're all there. Good people. Al, his son, AJ. That's Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton. Go there and check it out, and then give us a call and tell us all the jewelry that is bogging you down. That, you know, maybe you've lost 50 pounds, but you got 50 new pounds worth of jewelry. It's a great exchange. Try it. Jules on Hampton. Finally, you know me with the suits. The St. Louis Suit Company is just my favorite place to go. I love buying new suits at Forsyth and Central in Clayton. They have been there for 29 years. You can go there and talk to Jay or Nick. They're the owners right there at the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. Fabulously great people. They probably think that my political ideas are a little off the wall, but on the other hand, they love to sell you a suit. So that's Forsyth and Central. And if you're getting married, again, great place to go. They'll fit you for all your wedding, your needs, your tuxes, everything. They do it at the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton. So check them out. Forsyth and Central. We love the St. Louis Suit Company. Okay. So let's talk about one thing that was a little surprising today. And certainly it surprised me when I heard it. I assumed right from the minute that I heard it, I assumed that there was more of a story than what was in the headline. But here's what's up. Fani Willis has got a couple of more problems. Not as much as the Republicans and the conservatives and the right-wing nuts and so forth. Not as much as they think and not as much as they hope. But the headline sounds a little problematic because here's the deal. 6 of the counts currently against Donald Trump are being thrown out. Dismissed. Now, they are not dismissed for good. They're not completely gone unless Fani Willis is satisfied with letting them go. They still have the entire RICO case, and they still have a ton of evidence of phone calls and efforts to convince people to do things that are illegal, and it's a conspiracy for sure. And the case can go forward just as it is right now, and a whole lot of people are going to spend a long time behind bars with this case. But here's what happened, just so you understand. And Fani Willis has got the decision to make here. It's up to her what's gone and what's not, because the concern of the judge was that the charges were not specific enough so that the lawyers for Donald and the others in the case would be able to come up with a proper defense against the accusations. And I know people on my side are going to be freaked out. And in fact, I've already heard people freaked out, and they think, what are they doing to us? They're giving Donald a pass again. And they're not. And the judge really made it clear that he's not. All that's happening here is that Donald is getting due process. The charges against him have got to be specific enough so that the lawyers defending Trump can look at what's being said and develop a specific set of defenses in order to attack what the prosecutors are claiming. That's so easy to understand. It's not a trick. It's not a way to get Donald off the hook. Donald is going to still be held accountable. The RICO case is not going away. But Fani Willis has got to make some decisions. She has to decide, number one, does she want to appeal this? And that might not be such a good idea, because it sounds like the judge has made a pretty good decision, that he understood what the problem might be in an appeal. That is, if Trump were to lose and then appealed to the higher court, they could say, well, wait a second. These charges weren't specific enough. That is part of the law. You have to give a specific charge that can be defended. So that's number one. The judge was right. And again, don't take it from me. I'm just telling you what I have heard from numerous attorneys. Numerous. Not one. They're all saying it. And they're not people who love Trump. They're people who care about the law and understand what this judge is doing. So apparently, it looks like he has done the right thing, not aimed at letting Donald off the hook, but aimed at making this trial fair and also something that will not be overturned in an appeal. So that's the first part. The second part is that Fani Willis could take all of this that's been thrown out right back to a new grand jury with more specific charges, and then they could review it, find probable cause to charge, and bring this back into the case. Now, understandably, she might not want to do that because we could be looking at months. And I realize, everybody wants to take this forward and not wait for Donald to find some other way to sneak out from under this and go back under some rock. So she's going to have to decide. Is she willing to take the time? If she is, she's got an alternative. The appeal is probably not the way to do this. So what it looks like is she can either go forward with the case right now, which undoubtedly is still going to put all of these people in jail. It's not going to be good for them. They can jump up and down and say they won, but they didn't win. Or they could go to the grand jury, let this thing go on for another couple of months, and cross their fingers and hope that Donald doesn't become president, which he can't dump the case. But certainly he could avoid the prosecution for another 4 years, and nobody wants that. And I understand that the people on Donald's side do want that. But, fair people who want an answer, who want a jury to look at the law, to look at the behavior and make a judgment, those people, they want this to happen. They want Donald to either be held accountable or to get a jury to say, look, there's nothing here. Donald's free. He can go to California and start raking leaves, and we don't even have to put an ankle bracelet on him, and he'll be fine. That's possible. Not likely, but possible. Okay, so that's another development today, and we got to keep that in mind because, hey, this is complicated. A lot of cases, a lot of problems, a lot of people trying to figure out what's the next move. And I know in these political battles, there's always some of this, but in this case, there are so many cases flying around out here and so many issues and so many arguments that, in fact, it really is part of the benefit for Donald. I guarantee you, he benefits from the fact that there are indictments everywhere you look, because it does lead people to think that it doesn't mean anything. They come to the conclusion that, so what? Another indictment, big deal. No, they really don't think it matters. So here we are. A new wrinkle to this today, but there's one more coming, at least probably this week. And that is Judge McAfee is going to decide, or at least he has said he would, he's going to decide whether there's any reason to take Fonnie Willis out of this case. Now, I know there are a lot of people who think that the evidence is clear. She has lied. Nathan Wade lied. They've been doing everything that they said they weren't doing. Look, we don't know what they're doing. And what we know is this, or at least what I think we know from what I've heard, but we'll see. But I think the answer is there's nothing to do to her. She's going to walk on into this case and make the decisions and go forward. And this is not over by any stretch. This is not going to be turned over to another prosecutor. It's not going to be turned back to the Fulton County Department of Justice in some fashion where they have the right to say, forget it. We're not going to do this because Fonnie Willis is flawed and we don't want her and the judge has dismissed her. I don't think any of that's coming. I think what's coming is a clear decision that will say, maybe with a little language about how she could have said something differently or acted differently. The judge might add that in. But aside from any of those side remarks, I think what's going to come this week is that Fonnie Willis is going to remain in charge of the case. And, you know, when I heard this morning, the judge's decision about the indictment, I thought to myself, why would he be doing that unless he's going to keep this case going forward? And I think that is exactly what they're going to do. I think the case is going to go forward. And I think the judge has made the rulings with regard to the 6 items that were dismissed because he knows that he's decided that Fonnie Willis is going to continue as the prosecutor, that none of this is going back anywhere, and that this case is going to be continued. And I think that it's going to be continued relatively quick, and I wouldn't be surprised if she just lives with this dismissal and takes things forward in order to avoid the time delay. Because I think that if there's anything that Donald would consider to be a win, it would be pushing this thing off 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, or even 4 years. I think he would love that. So I think that Fonnie Willis will take this forward and just live with it and win the case anyhow. I mean, there's nothing weak about what remains. The only question is, first, what's the judge going to do with her? And I think she's going to remain. Other people said today that she might boot Wade off the case. And I have to tell you, I wouldn't feel bad about that, because from the moment that I heard Wade testify, I really didn't like him. I didn't like his attitude. I didn't like his attitude toward anyone, and I didn't like his attitude toward Fonnie Willis. I mean, if I were in her position, I would love, after that testimony, to get rid of this guy. I mean, I would toss him. And you could toss him really gently, too, and tell him, can't help it, gotta go. I need this case to win, and you around here is maybe a little toxic, and you gotta leave. And maybe that's the way she'll do it. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out here, but I would think maybe that would be a way to play this. But in any event, what we're going to find out very, very quickly is what McAfee is planning to do with Fonnie Willis. And I've said from the beginning that I thought Fonnie Willis would make it through this with ease. And I think that's where we are. And I'll tell you, I read so many things online, and I never realized how messed up the online news is until sort of recently when I started reading some things that they almost look credible. But then when you read the stories, they're crazy. I mean, they are totally not factual. And I can imagine when you're out here without a way of really discerning the difference, there are a lot of people who can read some of these things and believe something that is so far from true. But it plays into this bizarre reality that has been created by not only Donald, but I'm going to say by the Steven Spielberg Back to the Future mentality, which has to do with that alternative universe that is just so bad. And we're in it, and we got to find a way out of it. And I think we will. And I think we will relatively soon. And I mean by the election. Because I'm one, I read all these polls. I know what they say. They basically say 45-45. That's basically it. I mean, there are polls that show Trump ahead by 3 or 4. There are polls that show Biden ahead by 2. And I think that what people are missing is that 10% that isn't included in those polls. It's 45-45. That's 90. What about those other 10? Well, they may be saying nothing right now, but I think you're going to find that these are people who would never vote for Donald Trump. Never. And I think that's the difference. Those numbers are going to go, I think, in a big way to Joe Biden. I think that's going to have one impact in this election. And then, of course, there's some of these third parties that are involved in this. And I just don't see a lot of people going for RFK Jr. The family thinks RFK Jr. is a complete nutcase. And they say it at every opportunity. Now, I understand that there are people who will not believe the family. But RFK Jr. is not playing with a full deck. He's just not. And everybody has known that for a long time. And then suddenly he showed up in this election, and you got polls showing him at 14, 12, over 10% anyway. And that's a lot for somebody who is essentially nobody, except he's got a famous father and a famous uncle. He's got that. But beyond that, he hasn't got much. No common sense, that's for sure. He wants you to leave your family unvaccinated. And you see the numbers, or you should, in today's world, rising cases of polio and measles, the two areas that we had vaccinated into oblivion. But suddenly, with people unvaccinated, and then those coming from other countries where there were no vaccinations, and the next thing you know, somebody is spreading the diseases again. We were rid of those. And now they're back because of RFK Jr. and Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis and a whole group of people around this country who are just talking crazy, and at one time or another were willing to inject themselves either with bleach or with some kind of animal tranquilizer. The whole thing is nuts. I don't think that you'll see RFK Jr. with 12 or 14%. I think you're probably looking at maybe 4%. And look, that's even problematic as well, because with the numbers as close as they are, it wouldn't take much to create havoc for somebody. I say somebody, because if you're talking about votes by crazy people, well, that could all be coming from Donald. I suspect it is. And speaking of crazy, you know, the United States came up with $300 million to send to Ukraine. And the response from some members of Congress is pretty crazy. They truly want that money withheld from Ukraine. These are people on the fringe. They're nobodies. They're way in the minority. I mean, 2%. This country supports both Ukraine and NATO. This country loves the results of 80 years of NATO. No world war. This country appreciates the leadership that we have shown that has kept us out of the worst possible circumstances. And sure, Vietnam and Iraq and all of that's bad, but it's not as bad as destroying the planet. We've held the planet together, and we certainly have the resources to destroy the planet. But we've stopped that, and that's a good thing. So let's hope that we keep the crazies at bay, and one day soon, we may be able to slide all these people back into the woodwork where they really had been since the end of the John Birch Society 60 years ago, and then somehow Donald revived all of this lunacy. I say we're going to get rid of it. And I think soon, and I think you're going to see it in this election. So be prepared for good news, unless you're Donald Trump headed for federal prison. Like I always say, he's going to be president of the Prisoners Association. So once again, I remind you, the program brought to you by the St. Louis Suit Company, Wenty's, and Jules on Hampton. And I'll be back tomorrow with Stephanie Harmon, who is on assignment. Until then, this is Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen. Good night.